Magavanen and well met. I'm Arachír Galudirithon, head of Divide and Conquer, and welcome to the Rohan overview video. Now, of course, Rohan are not a DAC unique faction. They have been hardly touched at all in terms of added content through Divide and Conquer, with only a few scripts, and by a few scripts I mean the Garrison script and the Glittering Caves. And we've twiddled with their stats a little bit, but essentially they are the same faction that you will find in the base 3rd Age game. However, this video has been requested more than almost any other faction for overviews, and I believe that's because people are finding it rather difficult to deal with the onslaught of Isengard. Now, I can hopefully attempt to alleviate some of the problems there, but mostly I shall just explain why you are attacked from Isengard so abruptly. But first of all, we will start with these videos as we always do, with my little list, beginning with the game start. Now, like the Kingdom of Gondor, Rohan is a very established kingdom at the time of the 3rd Age, and their lands are reasonably well mapped and known. And from that, as you can see, you start with a particularly large area in comparison to most other factions. Aldburg in the east, the old capital of Rohan and now the home of Eomer. To the north you have obviously Dunlustir. You haven't got any of the lands of the Wold yet, nor up to the Anduin, but they're free for the takings, we'll see in a minute. You've got your capital of Edoras, Dunharrow, which is a custom settlement, a very fun custom settlement that is very easy to defend. So if you do have to withdraw to Dunharrow, you should find it quite easy to hold there. Obviously you've got the castle of the Hornburg, which is also very easy to hold, and you've got Foldburg in the Gap of Rohan, or the Westfold region. The Gap of Rohan is the Ginyard region. And you also have Onodrith to the northeast. And lounging around up here is Prince Eomer himself. Obviously, few points to note with Rohan before we begin, few lore points. Rohan are one of the factions where we have had to twist the lore in order to allow certain features to exist. And Eomer, the other faction that has this quite significantly, is Gondor. But Rohan are the first. Well, I don't know if I touched upon it in the Gondor video, but I'll touch upon it on the Rohan one, and that is that Eomer should not be alive. So, or I think he should be 2. I'm pretty sure he's born in 2978. I want to say 78. Of course, this is all off the top of my head, and feel free to go onto the internet and then correct me like you know exactly what you're talking about. But it's difficult to prove the validity when the internet is available to you. But anyway, Eomer is either very, very young or not yet born, so he should not be a general. He certainly should not be your prince, and he should not be 16 years of age. Your prince should be Theodred, who I believe is also not yet born, because your current king in 2980 should be King Thengel. Theoden is not even king yet, and we used to actually have a script whereby as soon as you end your first turn as Rohan, Thengel dies and Theoden becomes king, because that was lore accurate. Theoden becomes king either in 2980 or 2981, and so to reflect that we had Thengel die almost immediately. But almost everybody thought it was a bug, and nobody seemed to appreciate that that was actually what should happen. So we removed it, and Thengel's already dead and Theoden's king. However, in order to ensure that Eomer, who is a much beloved and well-known character from obviously the movies that everybody wants to love, to ensure that he becomes your king, we've already killed Theodred. So if you go to your family tree, you will notice that Theodred is already dead. Even though he should not be dead, I think it should be that Eomer and Eowyn shouldn't yet be born, and Theodred should be 1, 2, or 3, something like that. But anyway, to ensure that it's more accurate to the movies, where obviously a lot of people come to this game because they watch the movies, so we have to try and strike a balance between die-hard lore fans and people who will only play games like this because the movies inspire them to. And we try and meet somewhere in the middle. So Eomer is your prince. Anyway, that's out of the way. Let's talk about your rebel expansion. You don't have very many options as Rohan. In fact, as almost all factions don't really have very many options apart from, say, Dorwinion. But because almost everything is taken from you, I'm afraid. To the west, Isengard will border you immediately upon the ending of turn 1. So you could potentially rush to Ginyard and take that before Isengard do, because they'll get it in the turn 1 auto expansion, but if you already own it, they won't get it. However, you will have to stretch your forces thin to claim Ginyard, and it may not serve you well in the long run. Your other alternatives are to head north, where the 2 provinces of the Wold are not yet conquered. You have Rochberg directly north, and Tirith Anduin, the guardian of the Anduin, to the northeast. But that, unfortunately, is it. To the east, you border Gondor. Their castle is just around there. And obviously, you haven't bordered with the Anduin, but once you do, you will border with either Mordor or Dol Guldur. Or potentially Gondor, depending on who takes the small rebel province here in the Dead Marshes. But you will certainly border with Dol Guldur, because this province here is claimed by them in the turn 1. So your only options really are to head north and take a few rebels between you and Lothlorien, or to try and beat Isengard to some of them here, but that will really not serve you well in the long run, so I do not advise that. And obviously your neighbours I've already touched upon, but you've got Isengard to your north at the black markings just there, that's Orthanc itself. Gondor to your south and east, completely surrounding you on that side. Lothlorien just away to your north, Dol Guldur to your northeast, and Mordor even further east. And those are your neighbours. Your allies at the beginning, I believe, are Gondor and Dol Amroth, as you can see there. And you are only at war with the Dunlendings. It's very worthwhile to note that you are not yet at war with Isengard. So do bear that in mind. Right, in terms of economy, Rohan don't really have anything special other than they have the potential to earn a great deal of money from the Glittering Caves once they upgrade them, but I'll touch on that in the scripts. But you are able to earn more money than usual because Edoras and Hornburg are both custom settlements, so they're as big as they're going to be, so you'll get some advantages from that. But other than that, there's nothing special about Rohan's economy. You don't really have any building restrictions per se, so you're not in a weaker economical position. And because you start with such large lands, you've got quite a lot of trade resources. You can see them dotted about everywhere. So Rohan is neither bankrupt nor massively wealthy, but you are leaning more towards rich than you are poor. So that's our economy. As I say, in construction, you don't have restrictions, apart from, I believe, you do not get the largest city size, which would be essentially the one bigger than Edoras. So if we take Edoras to be Rohan's maximum building capacity, that's why the largest you can build is a minor city. And for those of you who are wondering, the Hornburg was not built by the Rohirrim, it was built by the Gondorians long before Rohan was given to Rohan. Back when it was Calanathan. So they can't use that as your example. So the largest you can get, I believe, is Minor City. And in terms of guilds, obviously you get the Cavalry Guild, you're one of the few that do. The Horse Breeders Guild, Horse Breeders Guild, Master Horse Breeders Guild, and Yawl's Stables. Yawl being the warrior who led the forces of Rohan that was to become Rohan. He brought them south out of the Vales of the Anduin in the Oath of Yawl, and he was given Calanathan as his grounds. So that's why the Master Horse Breeders Guild is named after him, perhaps Rohan's founding father, as it were. So that's your construction. Now, in terms of scripts, we've already touched on the Glittering Caves, so we'll do the garrison first. The towns and villages and everything that you can currently see are the areas that you get a garrison. So you will not get a garrison in any of the lands to your west, because you don't share a culture with any of the peoples over here. You won't get a garrison anywhere to your north, because the elves bar you, and then the Anduin are middlemen. You won't get a garrison from Dol Guldur, Mordor, Gondor, any of there. Outside of your homeland, you will only get a garrison in non-starting regions once you've upgraded the town. So places like Tirith Anduin starts as a town. If you upgrade that to a large town, you'll then get a garrison. And other than that, you're guaranteed to get a garrison in the starting realm of Bree, Dale, and Dorwinion, because you share the same culture as those three. You are all Northmen, as you can see from the blue, purple, and white flag. But now, the other script, of course, is the Glittering Caves, which is added by Zarathos. There is the Cavern of Helm's Deep. Now, my understanding of this doesn't delve too deeply, because I'm not wildly familiar with the language of scripting, so it's tricky for me to discern from it. But my understanding of it is that you need good relations with Erebor, Khazad-dûm, or Moria, and the Blue Mountains. You need good relations with them, and you need an alliance with the Blue Mountains. I'm not sure. I don't think if you have an alliance with Erebor it triggers, but I might be wrong. But I know for certain that if you have an alliance with the Dwarves of the Blue Mountains and you have good relations with all 3 dwarves, then after a certain amount of time has passed, then the quest will trigger and you'll receive an envoy, and he'll tell you essentially what to do in order to complete the Glittering Caves. And it goes through a few stages. You welcome some dwarven pilgrims, and then I think there's some tasks you might have to do, and then eventually the caves are upgraded. And once the caves are at their maximum level, then you get obviously a monetary bonus. You get to recruit a dwarven unit, which you'll see in the second half of this video. And you also get the ability to upgrade all of your units an extra blacksmith tier, if they can. So all units are hard. It is unchangeable that units cannot be upgraded more than 3 times. That is a hard-coded limit. That's what I was looking for, hard-coded. So if a unit's already upgraded 3 times, it won't benefit from the caves. But if a unit has not upgraded at all, or has only upgraded once or twice, then the caves will upgrade them to a 4th level. So it gives the Men of Rohan access to a higher blacksmithing tier than they used to originally have. So it's quite a nifty little thing, a nifty little script. And it's very cool getting the dwarven units because they have Rohirrim-inspired design, but they're dwarves, so they look like small, sturdy Rohirrim. It's very cool. So certainly do try and get that if you can. Right, now here's the big one. What tips can I give you about playing as Rohan, and why does Isengard attack you immediately? Now obviously to your east you're completely safe, and Gondor will be your wall for quite some time, but you will eventually have to help them out, so do bear that in mind. To the northeast, Dol Guldur will likely leave you alone because the elves and Anduin will deal with them. And to the west, Isengard will separate you from Dunland, which often forces Dunland to focus all their attention north on Bree and the northern Dunedain, or in the 50-50 chance, because they will either attack Enedwaith or they'll ally with them, is the general consensus. And if they attack Enedwaith, then Dunland will also then not be too much of an issue because they'll be dealing with Enedwaith. So, your only real threat is Isengard. Now, Isengard, obviously, up until much later on, I believe Saruman doesn't reveal his true intentions till around something like 3019 of the Third Age, so you've got another 39 years before he even reveals that he's evil. It might be a couple of years before that, but it's certainly a long way off from now. So again, it's another point where we've bent the law in order to accommodate Isengard, because Isengard at the moment should not be your enemy at all. They won't even have an army. Saruman hasn't done anything evil yet. He's not joined with Sauron. None of that has happened. But we've bent it so that that has all happened, so that obviously the Isengard are a faction. And so, to emulate Isengard's sudden onset of Rohan and essentially alliance with evil out of the blue, that is why they start with a large army immediately. Because it's trying to emulate the fact that Rohan was completely blindsided by Saruman. It wasn't like a long border war between the two. Isengard arose and they swept away the Westfold, and they began, and that's where you get the burning of the Westfold. And they launched their assault wholeheartedly on Rohan, and it wasn't, as I say, it wasn't border skirmishes for like 20 years or anything like that. It was immediate in the grand scheme of things. I mean, obviously there was months of development, but in terms of years, it was essentially immediate. So to emulate that, Isengard spawn a full force of their troops immediately, which is the force that people are so fearful of because it contains the trolls. You face an army of armoured trolls almost immediately when you play as Rohan. And that's what you have to try and deal with. So, in order to counter that, what you are going to want to do, because remember, trolls are not affected at all by spearmen or pikemen. Do not use spearmen or pikemen. Sorry, do excuse me. Your best way of killing the trolls... I must take a drink. The best way of killing the trolls is charging them with your incredibly elite bodyguards, which all of your generals have. Rohan bodyguards. Charging them with just any type of cavalry, or using any archer or armor-piercing units that you have. Now, the way to obliterate Isengard almost immediately and make your Rohan campaign really boring, and the reason why I never play as them, is because if at the very beginning of the game you begin training all your units that you can from the Hornburg and from Edoras, and if potentially you can get any from Foldburg, then get them from Foldburg as well. Train everything you can on this western side, and immediately ship absolutely everyone that you can from these other towns. So for example, if we see from Aldburg, we change them to low tax rate, and we move our general out, and it still likes us. And as you can see, it's got 115%, so you can worry about putting in the cheapest unit that you can potentially field, which is your Yawling Militia just there at 360. Train some Yawling Militia when you finally got the time, and muster every single unit that you have got and send them west. And what you're going to want to try and do is either rush Isengard and take it almost immediately, because then regardless of this large spawn army that's knocking around, you will have completely crippled Isengard. Without Orthanc, they are nothing. They have 2 villages and a town, none of which are built up. So you've got to take Orthanc. You've got to cripple Orthanc. Now, of course, I will just stress at this time that if this all comes off and this works as I say, you will have defeated your greatest and essentially only enemy within the first sort of 30 turns. And it will then just mean that if you really enjoy games where you are all powerful from the get-go, then by all means take out Isengard. But personally, I would suggest you try and whittle them down and beat them normally, because otherwise the Rohan campaign's really boring. But obviously do what you like. It's your own game. We try and give you the tools to be as free as you can. That's the point of Total War. But anyway, gather everything that you can and send it across and try and take Orthanc. And when you do deal with the large army, remember that the Isengard pikemen are perhaps the best pikemen in the game. So flanking them and hitting them in the rear is completely essential. We get a little fed up of telling people not to charge the pikemen head on. You always get people saying like, oh, I've been fighting the pikemen with my swordmen for 5 minutes and I've killed 2 pikemen and they've obliterated my swordsmen. And it's like, yes, they will do that from the front because of the animation tactics of the pike. And just the pikes in general. The way this game deals with pikes, they act like a solid wall that you can't get through. So you have to flank them, you have to charge from the rear. But if you do that, they fall really easily. So just flank them and all your worries are gone. And it's the same thing with the trolls. You want to try and bring the trolls down by hitting them hard with charges, so you get the maximum effectiveness from your troops. And of course, as I already have said, use archers, use javelin throwers, and use armor piercing, because that will bring the trolls down in no time. And that would be my tip to deal with Isengard, is hit them very hard with absolutely everything you've got. Do not worry about leaving much of a garrison, if you even bother leaving a garrison in any of your towns. And if you are struggling to beat them, hold them on the Fords of Isen, because it's quite an easy battle map. It's quite a fun and useful battle map. And as you can see from his movement pattern, the next available crossing of the river, I believe, is there. Or possibly, like, if we move him there and then try and move him. No, the next crossing is all the way down there. So if you camp on the Fords of Isen, then they are not going to be sending many troops up from Derwath, and it will take them a long time to get anything round past Ginyard and Bregnas and through the eastern side of Westmarch. Through the western edge of Westmarch, sorry. So hold on the ford if you can. Right, the final thing I'll just say about that before we move into the unit side of this video is that the other reason Isengard get that huge spawn, or I'll do it while we go actually. The other reason that Isengard get given that huge spawn is because without it, they are beaten almost immediately in every single test game that I ever played, that any of us have ever played. If you play as Rohan and they don't get that spawn army, I honestly, hand on heart, you can beat Isengard within the first 10 turns. And that's just, I know the game is all about freedom, but that's just ridiculous. It would essentially mean that no one would ever play as Rohan because it's far too easy. So we did away with that, and we've given them the spawn, mostly to emulate the rival of Sauron, but also by way of keeping Rohan a difficult-ish campaign and keeping Isengard alive. But right, let's move on to the units. So, change the mouse, move everyone away. This is our roster. As you can see, the roster is defined heavily by cavalry, as you would expect. Rohan may not have the best cavalry in the earth. That accolade goes certainly to the Knights of the Silver Swan or the Cataphracts of Run. But you do get the most cavalry, and you also get the most diverse cavalry. So you get the most options And also your cavalry, on average, your cavalry is a lot better. So for example, the Knights of the Silver Swan and the Lokrim Cataphracts of Run, they're incredibly good, but the supporting cavalry for them isn't as good. So you can play it off there. But there is an argument to say that Dol Amroth are a better cavalry faction than Rohan, but they do cost a lot more and they're a lot rarer, so you will have more cavalry on the field than they would. But let's line everybody up. And where's the first archers? Yawling archers. Scouts. Rohan riders come in the next one. 9 you up here. These are your militia tier. Here red lancers are quite up. Just saw briefly from the stats of the dwarves there, but we'll show you more in a moment. They are very, very good. Ah, there's a spearman. I knew there was another one. What you will also notice is that in terms of foot soldiers, you get hardly any archers, indeed only getting 2, and one of them is an AOR. And you're in that second tier. Rohan light spears. Helmingus, you're also in that. I mean, not really in that second tier. You and the Riddermark Axemen are a bit higher, really. Heavy A red lancers. Horse archers. As you can probably tell from this video, I never play as Rohan, as I've already said many times, and so as you can see, I don't really know anything about the stats of Rohan. So it will very much be my first time looking at all of these units as well. But I think we've broken it down enough now to have our tiers, although we'll move the Royal Guard because they are the best. They're the tippity top of the pyramid of stats. Well, the dwarves are certainly vying for that position as well, but these are the breakdown of the stats, with the units sort of in the middle there. But otherwise you've got militia, medium, heavy and elite, and then you've got the sort of unknowns in the middle there, the Riddermark Axemen and Helmingers, or Helmingas. And the dwarves, obviously, as a side, the guards of the caves over on there. But we'll start with the stats at the beginning. Now, the first cavalry unit that you get are scouts, and they are weak, very weak. 3 total defense, absolutely abysmal. 2 attack, and only a 5 charge. These are not your mainline battle cavalry. These are chase down the enemy when you've won cavalry. A secondary attack of 4, which is better, but it's still not ideal. It's also worth mentioning at this point that Rohan do not get particularly good morale at any stage. Only the Royal Guard have any good morale to speak of, and the odd unit here and there. They get a bonus in grassland, and then a negative everywhere else, but that's only for the cavalry. So if we just take a quick look at some foot soldiers, most of Rohan's foot units get a bonus in forest and snow and a negative in desert, and most of their cavalry get a bonus in grassland and a negative everywhere else. So you're just not wildly good in the mountains, and you're terrible in the desert. So try and fight on plains, grassland, or snow. Forest, sorry, not snow, forest. So there's the scouts. They're your first cavalry unit. Very cheap though. Very cheap unit. Their upkeep was something like 144, which is very good indeed. But as I say, they're not the kind of unit that you're going to attack the enemy with. You're only going to flank the enemy with them or chase down routing units. Right. Now the Yawling Militia are your standard infantry, the first infantry unit you will train, as you can see from their rabble-like formation compared to the more regimented lines of their neighbours. And their defence is 5, which is not bad for militia, but it's certainly nothing to scream of. Gondor militia are around 9, 10, 11. So you're not as good as your neighbours, as you might imagine. But still, that's not terrible. Much better than the orcs or the wildmen. Your attack of 2, charge of 2, again, nothing to speak of. And again, poor morale response. But the Yawning militia do have spears, and they get a bonus against horses, as you see there, but not against wargs. They only get a bonus against horses, and they look like a rabble, like you'd expect. Next up are Yawling Axemen. Now, these are your aggressive counterpart of this early tier, but again, they're sort of a middle tier unit between militia and light. Now, these are the first ones that are effective against armour, so these are going to be very useful in your attempts to bring down those trolls you have to deal with at turn 1. They got a 9 defense, which is not bad. Starting to get to the Militia of Gondor level. Charge of 4 as well, which is good. So you want these guys to be attacking, these to be the charging unit, not the holding the line unit. But their morale is average, and morale response is also average, which is good for a militia tier unit. Normally militia tier units, like the Yawling militia, have poor morale response. So Yawling Axemen are a good, solid early infantry, and should form the backbone of your early game army. Yawling archers are one of the only foot archers you get, one of 2 only foot archers you get, and the only one available everywhere. So you are likely to fill your army with these because they're the only thing available to you. However, again, like the Yawling Axemen, they're kind of a middle tier between militia and heavy and medium. Defense of 6, similar to the militia, but no shields, so do watch out for arrow fire. Their melee attack is 6 though, which is rather rare because they're actually very good once they've stopped with their bows on the attack. So do not be afraid to charge with them, but do be a little worried with defending with them. They've got a low accuracy, which is not wonderful. Their range is only 150, which is not ideal, and they've only got 18 arrows, of course, but their morale is average, and morale response again is average. So they're not bad, it would be the official description I would give of those archers in regards to the whole of Middle-earth. They are not bad archers. Right, now we come to tier 2, but it's worth mentioning that... Oh, no, I'm thinking of Westfold Riders, wherever they are. Riders of the Fold, up there. Right, we'll start with the cavalry again, and the Rohan Rider. Now, the Rohan Rider is your completely main battle line unit. This is your standard cavalry, most readily available, and, the scouts are just as available, but most readily available unit that you would actually want. They are a lot better than the scouts, as you can see. Defense of 10 compared to the 3 defense of the scouts. Their charge bonus is 6, and their initial attack is 4, and their secondary attack is 6. So they are dependable cavalry. They've got an average morale and average morale response. These are just like in the same way that the Yawling Archers and Yawling Axemen will form the main of your units on the ground. These will be the main composition of your army mounted. And you'll use these a great deal. So those are the cavalry. They don't have anything else to speak of, as you can see. Good stamina, which is nothing amazing. Units can either have 1, 2 or 3 in terms of stamina, with 2 being good and 3 being excellent and 1 being not listed. So good is average stamina. Next up are Riddermark skirmishers, and these are your javelin throwers. And as they are javelin throwers, they are effective against armor, which is a bonus of their javelins. They have a missile attack of 12, a defense of 12, and their melee is 7. So these are very, very good cavalry. But unfortunately, as you can see from the text, they are only available in Rohan's heartland. So essentially Rohan's homeland. So you're going to get them in places like Edoras, Dunharrow, Aldburg, Onodrith, Dunlastir, the Hornburg, if I haven't mentioned that, and Foldburg. They are only available in Rohan's home. But these are, along with the Yawling Axemen, and even more so than the Yawling Axemen, these are the unit that you will use to deal with the trolls. They can keep out of the trolls' range because they're faster than them. They can use their effective against armor range to bring the trolls down before the trolls become a problem. And because they are ranged units anyway, that's the best way of dealing with trolls, because trolls tend to not have shields, and their defense is often categorized by their defense skill, which is not taken into account when arrows hit them. So these will be able to rip through the trolls if you have enough of them and you use them wisely. Don't let the trolls engage them, because then the trolls will bring them down. But they've got a 60-meter range, which is good, average accuracy, which is good for cavalry, and average morale response again. And that's your Riddermark skirmishers, so do take note. The next unit up are the Aered horse archers. Now these are available everywhere and are the mounted archer division of the Yawling archers, and your counterparts to the Rohan riders, but horse archers. The defense is 7, nothing to scream of. The melee is 6, which is similar, which is the same as Rohan riders actually. So they're essentially Rohan riders with bows. The missile attack is 3, which is not wonderful. But as they are cavalry, they've got that mobility. They've got 28 missiles, which is rare for a unit of this tier. A ground unit of this tier would be around 18 or 20 missiles. Range is 120 because it's never as big on a horse. And the accuracy is average, which is good for a cavalry. Average accuracy for cavalry archers is good. So you also have them in your army because mobility is key for Rohan, because if Isengard engage you, they will often outclass you at every tier. So using your cavalry to charge them and your archers to keep them out of range is ideal. The next units to talk of at this level are the Rohan Spearmen. There they are.
Rohan Light Spears.
Rohan Light Spears, as the man is telling us. They have 11 defense. So these are the spear counterparts of the Yawling Axemen. So really what it should have been is Yawling Archers and Yawling Axemen should have joined this tier here. So your militia really are only Yawling Militia and Scouts, and then everyone else is in this medium tier. So you've got Yawling Axemen, Yawling Swordmen and Yawling Archers, and Rohan Spearmen. So the Spearmen 11 defense, similar to the Yawling Axemen of 9, and the Yawling Archers of 6. If they had a shield, they'd be up there as well. Obviously these are effective against cavalry. They are better stats, attack, better charge, better defense, and all round better than your Yawling Militia. And they also have better morale, as you saw there, average and average, and they get a bonus against wargs as well, so these will be useful against bringing down the wargs. Just do remember that the militia do not get a bonus against wargs. Next up at this tier are Yawling Swordmen. These are the halfway house between the Axemen, who are the aggressive unit, and the Spearmen, who are the defensive unit. These are the Yawling Swordmen, and that is reflected in their reasonably high attack of 6, charge of 3, which is quite good, but also a high defense. Obviously there's no effective against armor, but they have a higher defense than the Yawling Axemen, so they're going to last a little longer there. And they've got average morale and average morale response, but otherwise they're just battle line mainstream swordsmen. And these 4 units will be the bulk of your infantry for most of, if not the entire game, because the units available at this upper tier are rather rare if they are dismounted. Alright, and that is the middle tier, so we'll jump to the defensive midfielders, as I like to think of them, because I do play a lot of football. And this is the Riddermark's Axemen and the Helmingers. Now Helmingers are only available in Helm's Deep, that's where they get their name from, but they are heavily armoured and well equipped archers. A missile attack of 5 is very good for humans, that's getting up there with medium if not elite archers of Gondor. Their melee attack is 8, so they're good once they finish with their bows. And their defense is 14, so they're going to hold out for quite some time. They've got a 170 meter range with an average accuracy, and their morale is now good and a good morale response. These are the defenders of Helm's Deep, and they live up to that name very well, as they will survive for quite some time. And they are just all-round good archers. Isengard will learn to fear the Helmingers, because even though they're not amazing archers, with what you get as Rohan, they will bring down a lot of Isengard's army. Next up are the Riddermark Axemen. That's rather annoying that he calls them Riddermark. The Riddermark Axemen, they again are effective against armour, but again they require a home province, the same as the Riddermark Skirmishers, which are the javelin throwing cavalry. So you need a home province in order for these to train, but other than that they are phenomenal. If there are any of these available at the start of the game, get them. The army that you want to deal with, that spawn army that begins, will involve mostly Riddermark Axemen and Riddermark Skirmishers, as they will deal with the trolls and any heavily armoured or Uruks that will come at you. And then you will also want as many archers as you can to keep Isengard away while your cavalry charge and pepper them before they meet any battle line that you might have. So these are very important against the trolls and against the heavily armoured units Isengard will bring to bear if they survive to the barracks event. Their attack is 8, supplemented by their effective against armour, which is obviously makes it very, very good. Charge is 6, so they've got a great charge. And their defence is 15. Now, do note they don't have a shield, so they are susceptible to arrow fire. But they've also got good morale and good morale response. And they have a bonus against elephants. So Oliphants and the great beasts of Mordor are also susceptible to these guys. So do bear that in mind. Right, now we come to the just below the elite tier. And we'll start with the cavalry again. You've got Aered Heavy Lancers. Now these are your essentially the similar to the Rohan Riders, but at the elite tier. So they're available everywhere. They have a 21 defense, which is very good for a cavalry. Their initial attack is 7 with a great charge of 12. They're going to do a lot of damage on the charge. They live up to the name of Heavy Lancers. And their secondary attack is 9, which is very good for a cavalry unit. So they are very good cavalry. Certainly up there with the likes of Dol Amroth's elite White Knights and Lancers of Dorian Ernell and the like. So very good cavalry. Train them. Certainly train them if you can. And as you can see there, they also get a bonus against other cavalry. So they are Rohan's answer to other cavalry, as well as Rohan's mainline elite cavalry. And then you also get the Riders of the Fold. These are a better cavalry archer, as you can see, with a missile attack of 6, a melee of 9, defense of 20, charge of 6. They can form a Cantabrian circle or a shooting circle, but they are only available in the East or West Fold, which I believe is Foldburg and Dunlusteer. They're only available in those two regions, but they've got good stats for a cavalry archer, and they're certainly very good once they've run out of arrows and they're using their swords. So you want to try and use them whenever you can. You also get dismounted Aered Lancers, who we may just call Aered Lancers because I do not like dismounted. They're very sturdy and dependable shield and spear warriors with obviously a defense of 17, attack of 5, charge of 3. They're effective against cavalry and they can make a shield wall. So very dependable elite tier spear unit. And then you also get the dwarves at this tier. Now this is what they look like. As I say, they are Rohan inspired dwarf. They're like a cross between dwarven warriors and Rohan warriors. They have the voice of dwarves. They are only available once you've upgraded the glittering caves, but they are phenomenally good, as you can see from their 25 defense. So far the best defense of a unit in this army. Now unfortunately they can't hide, but they've got excellent stamina. One of the few units that you may have seen that actually has excellent stamina. It's a characteristic of only a few units of Rohan. Their attack is 9, which is very good for a mainline battle unit, but their charge obviously is not wonderful because they are quite small and they can't really run very fast. But their most useful tool is that they've got this insane defense coupled with very good morale. They've also obviously got good morale response, and they only have a negative fighting in desert, so they will not be they won't fight any worse anywhere other than desert. So very, very good unit when you can get them. They are certainly up. Essentially they are at this tier, but I believe they're available quite early as soon as you've upgraded the caverns. And at this tier are the famed Royal Guard of Rohan. Royal Guard on their horses and dismounted Royal Guard. Now unfortunately this time there is no real way of getting around the fact that they're dismounted Royal Guard, because that is exactly what they are. They're Royal Guard, and that's the foot and that's the cavalry counterpart, so that's why their names are so poor. But you've also got the Rohan Bodyguards, which is just a small elite section of the Royal Guard as bodyguard. You may have noticed that the bodyguards are the only ones that have that gold chainmail style armor, and that's how you can distinguish them on the battlefield. But we'll start with the cavalry. The Royal Guard. They have 28 total defense, which is up there almost with the Knights of the Silver Swan, so they can really go toe to toe with the elites. They inspire nearby troops. They are skilled against other cavalry, which is very, very good, obviously. They are very good morale and a good morale response. And an attack of 9, a charge of 13 with a secondary attack of 11. They are really strong. They really are very, very strong. But as you can see, they need Edoras. They are only available in one region. And the same is true of the dismounted. They are also only available in Edoras. But again, they have the same stats, very good against camels, wargs, horses and elephants. And obviously that only tells you that they have a bonus against them, but what you don't know is that in the stats, a certain unit can have anywhere from 2 to 12 bonus against cavalry. So your Yawling Militia, whilst it says that they've got a bonus against horses, that will be like a +2 bonus against horses. But the Royal Guard will have something like a +6 against horses. So the more elite the unit, the better the bonus against cavalry. They again have a 28 armor, an 8 attack with a 4 charge, and they can shield wall. Very good morale response as well. Very good morale, sorry, with a good morale response. And a very, very good unit. But again, unfortunately, they require Edoras, which is why I've made so much attention to the Aered Heavy Lancers and the dismounted Aered Lancers, because those two units are your train anywhere elite cavalry and elite infantry. And finally the bodyguards, who are just better than the standard cavalry in each way. As you can see, better defense. Their attack is one worse actually, but their charge is better. No, the charge is the same, sorry. They do just have a worse attack, but a better defense. But there's a smaller number of them, as you can see. But they do have a slightly higher defense, so they're likely to last longer. And that is Rohan's roster. So we shall line everyone up as we always do. And we shall fight against the Dunlendings, because although in the films Isengard are Rohan's great enemy, in the lore of Middle-earth, Dunland are Rohan's great enemy. Isengard, in the film, Isengard are Rohan's great enemy. I think I may have just said Gondor. Not really sure. But obviously in, shall we say, real life, Dunland are the great enemy of Rohan, indeed seizing the throne of Edoras for some time before being kicked out and pushed further into the hills. But we've lined everybody up, and we shall, very rarely for these types of battles, just charge everyone in. Because this is obviously not how you use cavalry. I don't really want to make these videos also just general gameplay tips. I feel like there are plenty of gameplay tips and plenty of different ways of playing, and as some people have been saying in the comments, they find my relaxed battle style rather annoying, but I don't go for maximum efficiency in my battles. I go for just overall victory, and I don't find the game particularly hard. So, oh look, there's Dunland's uber elite Guardians of Dunland, the counterpart to the Guardians of Enedwaith, and Dunland's reward should they reclaim all the lands of Enedwaith. Oh, what you don't also realise, that the stats don't tell you, but watching as these cavalry all run, is that in order to make Rohan really feel like they are the ultimate cavalry faction, their cavalry are faster than almost anyone else, with the only cavalry that are faster than Rohan's are the forces of Khand. But Khand's cavalry aren't as good, so Khand have very, very, very fast cavalry and a lot of cavalry, but they're not really that good. Rohan have very fast cavalry, and not as many as Khand, but quite a lot of cavalry, but on average they are very good, very dependable. And obviously Dol Amroth have slow, heavy and expensive cavalry, so you get to make up your own mind of who gets the best cavalry in that regard, really. There are all the forces of Rohan fighting against the forces of Dunland, the ancient enemy. Cavalry will probably all be killed. They're locked in battle. Rohan tend to favour axes. You find a lot of your units have axes instead of swords as their secondary attack. Oh, look at the scouts. They've burnt through those. What were they? Oh, outlaws. Dunland's worst unit there. More cavalry on the end. Alright, and that is the Rohan video. So I do hope that this has given you some tips in defeating Isengard. I know some people are really struggling with it. So do feel free to write in the comments if you have any other tips you'd like to share with anybody else, or you feel that my tips could use some brushing up, or indeed you'd like to correct some of the lore that I have said, because I'm not going to bother going onto the internet or reading the books and double checking what I said. You can learn that for yourself. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But that is the Rohan overview. So again, just to recap on the tips, try and attack Isengard as fast as possible with every single unit that you get at the game start. Focus on training any unit, the two Riddermark units, so Riddermark Skirmishers and Riddermark Axemen. If you can't get them, go with Yorling Axemen. And if you can't get them, just try and get as many archers as you can bloody well get in your army. And then that will be what you've got to deal with Isengard. Because the trolls are the threat. And once they are dead, that spawn army that begins is not too bad, and you can whittle it down over time. And then once the spawn army is gone, the gates of Orthanc lay before you, and you can charge, and you can take them. So try and attack Isengard as fast as possible. Now, of course, if you don't want your game to end quite quickly, or not end, but if you don't want your game to be essentially dull quite quickly, do not attack Isengard that fast, and hold on the fords of Isen, defeat the spawn army, and take Isengard down slowly. But the choice is entirely yours. You've then got Enedwaith and Rohan to deal with once you've dealt with Isengard, and they'll both happily attack you. It's very likely that Enedwaith will be at war with Gondor, and as you are Gondor's allies, they'll likely attack you as well. So I suppose it's not too much of a problem from the Third Age. In the Third Age, I played as Rohan once. I defeated Isengard on turn 14, and I stopped immediately after that because I just felt like there was nothing left to fight against, because there was no Dunland, there was no Enedwaith. Neither of them exist in Third Age Total War. So I had to then run through Gondor's lands to fight Mordor, and it just didn't seem fun, so I stopped. But in DAC, obviously, once you defeat Isengard, you've then got Dunland, you've then got Enedwaith, you've then got Dol Guldur. All of those factions are likely to be attacking you, so there's a lot more options. But anyway, for now I shall end this video, so thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have. I am Arachír Galudirithon, the head of Divide and Conquer. To the naysayers, yes, the mod is indeed in development, or just to those who seem to question it, it is indeed in development still. Hummingbird and I, and Geostode and Zarathos are all still diligently working hard. So do expect updates, but we have no idea when the next one will come. We ideally want Moria to be fixed before we bring out the next one. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see the rest of the faction overview videos, and then a few videos of me playing this game as well. But no pressure if you don't. But for now, until we speak again, Navar na den Pedimad, and farewell.